Hello there. I'm reacting to what if Anakin, well, now, formerly Anakin, now Lord Vader, but I'm reacting to what if Darth Vader didn't burn and became the Emperor, and became Emperor. Now, I think you've seen like so many animations where Anakin didn't burn and he killed Kenobi and then he killed Palpatine. And he said, the galaxy belongs to me now. But let's see what happens if that happens. Let's see if Darth Vader didn't burn and became the Emperor. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. I will have Jedi and Lord's channel in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And let's go.
Palpatine has executed Order 66, ordering the clones to kill the Jedi all over the galaxy. Obi-Wan survives being shot and falling into the river on Utapau, and Master Yoda cuts off the heads of the clones as soon as he senses the danger. Back on Coruscant, Obi-Wan arrives at Padme Amidala's apartment, his face haggard and heavy with the fatigue of war. The galaxy was in chaos and the Jedi were falling one by one, betrayed by their own soldiers. He faces Padme, who is stroking her already advanced pregnancy belly, and asks directly, "Where is Anakin?" The senator averts her eyes, hesitating. He's on a mission, trying to end the war. Obi-Wan nods, his heart heavy, after countless failed attempts to make her believe that Anakin has fallen to the dark side. He fears that she will go to him in that state and end up suffering the worst, because Obi-Wan himself saw the footage in the temple and observed Anakin attacking the children. He even thinks about using the Jedi mind trick to induce her to accept his commands.
Yeah, that's definitely not the Jedi way, Kenobi. But I wonder if Padme will join Skywalker and become the Empress to the Emperor Vader.
But he doesn't do it. Not only because Padme had a powerful mind, but also because it would go against the code as she was an ally. He then chooses to show her the truth. Padme holds her breath as she sees the images of Anakin mercilessly killing Jedi children. "That can't be true," she whispers, her hands trembling. Obi-Wan understands his shock, but there is no more time for doubt. Palpatine has already proclaimed the birth of the Empire, and Anakin Skywalker was renamed Darth Vader the moment he swore allegiance to the Sith, after helping him kill Windu and the Jedi who confronted him. He's been taken over by the dark side, Padme. "He is no longer the man you loved," says Obi-Wan firmly. Padme feels the weight of that truth, but she can't accept losing him to the darkness. However, the maternal instinct speaks louder. Not for her, but for the children she is expecting. Making a difficult decision, she flees with Obi-Wan, leaving everything behind. They set off for Naboo, where Padme believes she will be safer. But the tranquility is short-lived. Her body is already showing signs that babies are on the way, and the situation is delicate. With Obi-Wan's help, she is rushed to a makeshift medical center on Polis Massa. The birth is complicated, and the pain is mixed with the fear of the uncertain future. But unlike in the original timeline, Padme doesn't lose her will to stay alive. The pain of betrayal is great, but the desire to protect her children and resist is even greater. The baby's cries fill the room, and as she looks at Luke and Leia, she feels that there is still hope. Knowing that Anakin, now Darth Vader, would mercilessly hunt down their children, Padme and Obi-Wan decide to separate them. Leia would be taken by Bail Organa, an old ally, to Alderaan, where she would be raised as his legitimate daughter. As for Luke, there was no easy decision. Obi-Wan suggested Tatooine, but Padme was reluctant. She didn't want her son to grow up so close to Anakin's origins, so they opted for a distant, discreet, and safe planet, where he could remain hidden until the time was right. Every goodbye broke Padme's heart, but she knew she couldn't let it get her down. Meanwhile, the Empire was strengthening rapidly. Darth Vader, alongside Palpatine, commanded the Imperial legions with brutality, exterminating the last remaining Jedi. Order 66 had already been put into effect, resulting in the murder of hundreds of Jedi, betrayed by their clone allies. Most of them didn't even have time to react. Few escaped. Palpatine had conducted a perfect coup, establishing his absolute rule over the galaxy with an iron fist. Yoda, Grand Master of the Jedi Order, confronts the Emperor directly in the Galactic Senate. Despite his immense wisdom and skill, the clash ends with the Jedi Master fleeing. Defeated, he does not immediately go into exile. Instead, he meets up with Obi-Wan and Padme. It was time to draw up a plan, not just to keep Anakin's children safe, but to keep hope alive. Together, the three vow to continue the resistance, even in the shadows, even alone. Padme hides while Vader sinks deeper and deeper into the dark side. With the Empire hunting down the Jedi and expanding its power, Yoda and Obi-Wan establish a clandestine resistance network. Surviving Jedi are contacted, only to hear the words of the Old Master. In hiding, the Jedi must stay long enough. In Mustafar, fire spat from the ground as if hell itself had awakened. Inside the Separatist fortress, shadows danced on metal walls as the new Dark Lord of the galaxy advanced. Darth Sidious's order had been simple: eliminate the Separatist leaders. But what we saw was more than a mission. It was a ritual slaughter. Darth Vader, or what was left of Anakin, raged through the corridors in a mute fury. Each stroke of his blue saber was a sentence. The commander's panicked cries echoed through the complex until, finally, only silence remained. Even Viceroy Gunray's cowardly pleading was of no value. Vader coldly silenced him, not out of duty, but out of contempt. No Grievous, no Tyrannus, no challenge. The execution was so easy that it felt like a personal vendetta. In the end, he stood there, alone among the smoking bodies, staring at his reflection in the metal walls. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a terrifying emptiness. Back on Coruscant, he tried desperately to find Padme. He repeated holographic calls like prayers. Distorted faces of anguish projected themselves into the darkness of his chamber. Padme, together we can rebuild everything. We can remake the galaxy with our hands. But there was no answer. No words. No presence. Not even the Force could help him sense her whereabouts. It was as if it had ceased to exist, and that tore him apart. Obsession gave way to paranoia and anger. Her silence was a deafening scream that spread through his soul, eating away at everything. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Yoda acted in the shadows. The ancient distress signal from the Jedi Temple now carried a dark truth. The Chosen One had been lost. Anakin was the traitor. The Republic, a corpse manipulated by the Sith. Surviving Jedi, devastated by loss and guilt, answered the call. 6 surviving Jedi, led by the 7th who was consecrated as a master, gathered in secret to confront the monster they had trained. The attack was devastating, but it wasn't enough. Anakin was no longer just a warrior. He was a force of nature, a living storm. The Jedis launched an all-out attack in the middle of the night, decapitating clones and smashing droids, but when they found Anakin, he revealed that he now went by Darth Vader and that his saber was an extension of his rage. The attack quickly began. Vader slashed, spun, and smashed like a hurricane of destruction. Walls collapsed with the power of the Force. Sabers flew from desperate hands, and screams were stifled in the night air of the quarters that once belonged to Anakin and Padme. One by one, the Jedis fell. Their bodies lay like martyrs of a past that would not return. The Jedi was no match for Vader either, and perished with a lightsaber piercing his belly. Vader wasn't fighting for victory. He was fighting to punish, to vent the silence that consumed him. His eyes burned with sulfur. There was no trace of Anakin. There was only Vader. Since swearing his loyalty to Sidious, Anakin had been plunged into a sea of poisoned promises. The idea of saving Padme had been the hook, power the bait. But now, with her gone, all he had left was the bitter taste of betrayal. Palpatine's castle of lies began to crumble. And when the two finally came face to face, there were no more masks. "You took her away from me," roared Vader, his voice shaking like thunder. Now, in an uncontrolled rage, he threw all his anger at having lost Padme at Palpatine, wishing only that the old man would suffer for his pain. The confrontation took shape in the heart of the Senate, a hall of echoes and ruins. Palpatine, surprised, reacted savagely. His spins and attacks resembled a predator in desperation. But Vader was younger, faster, more furious, just as Palpatine had wanted. But this time he ended up turning on his master, just as Darth Sidious had once done to his own. Each blow was a trial, each defense a rejection of the master who shaped him. "You broke me. You promised me the world, but you destroyed what I loved most. It's your fault and yours alone that she escaped," Sidious retorted, furious. "I gave you everything, unlimited power. You are the best of all, because you are mine. But now you will fall and I will find another apprentice, just as I did with the last ones." Lightning flashed from his fingers, wild as storms, but Vader faced them with implacable firmness. The blue saber trembled with absorbed energy, repelling the rays hurled at Vader while Palpatine's face contorted in pain from the lightning. The Force now belonged to the apprentice. With a jerk, the master's red saber was ripped away. Palpatine fell. He tried to get up, but age and decay weighed him down. Vader threw the saber back at him with cruel contempt. "Get up. Show me you're still useful." Staggering, the old man tried to struggle, but Vader pierced his leg. The Sith's scream echoed hollowly. "Wait, I can still help you," whispered the Emperor, spitting blood. Vader didn't reply. He just stared at him, eyes filled with grief and hatred. "You've taken everything from me." With his metal fist, he threw a punch that cracked the old man's chest. Then he lifted him up with the Force like a broken puppet. Palpatine, crying, raised his saber one last time, only to see his arm torn off. That night Anakin discovered that he had much more power than he had imagined and that Palpatine would never be able to beat him again. Over the next few days, the corridors of the Senate witnessed the unthinkable. Palpatine, once Lord of the Sith and Supreme Emperor, crept through the halls like a shadow of his former self. Chained by pain, subdued by the Force, he now walked bowed behind his pupil, not as a master, but as a servant. His face, unrecognizable from its mutilation, still bore the horror of someone who had glimpsed the abyss and survived it. The Empire hadn't just changed hands. It had been swallowed up by something new, something bigger. The name Anakin Skywalker had been erased from all records. Only Darth Vader remained, but not the same lackey as before, not the executor of orders. This Vader was a force of nature, an absolute emperor who ruled with pure, unbridled power. He hunted the surviving Jedi as a predator would hunt marked prey. Sitting on the old Senate throne, now transformed into an altar for the dark side, Vader gazed silently at the Coruscant sky. Palpatine, kneeling in his presence, trembled with every breath, a prisoner of constant pain, a pain that Vader fed as a reminder of his new position. But even at that height of power, there was no satisfaction. Vader had everything, except her, Padme. Her name echoed in his mind, and so the universe bled.
I'd do anything.
Let's put magic fairy dust on Murphy and Buzz so we can play together forever.
Wait.
The words echoed through the galactic Senate in sepulchral silence. Bandaged, with bones still broken, one arm missing and his face deformed, Palpatine gave his last public speech. "It was Anakin who saved me," he said, his voice failing. The moment the last Jedi tried to assassinate the rightful Emperor, the audience watched in shock as the former Sith Master extolled the power of the pupil he had once guided and renamed. "My time has passed, but thanks to him I am alive. Now it is he who must lead the Empire to its true destiny. I will be his humble servant." When he had finished speaking, the defeated Sith bowed his head and bit his lips so hard that he tasted his own blood. He had been forced to make that speech and was now extremely humiliated. Even so, the crowd responded with awe and forced applause. When Palpatine fell to his knees before the new Emperor, the entire galaxy understood that the throne had changed, and forever. Darth Vader took total control of the Empire with a ferocity never seen before. His eyes did not seek glory, only revenge. The name Padme became an obsession, repeated in dark whispers among officers and soldiers. Coruscant was covered by a permanent shadow. Literally, the artificial sky darkened as a reflection of the new ruler's mood. Every day, Vader scoured archives, planets, lost transmissions, all in search of his beloved, mobilizing both the clones and Palpatine himself to do the searching. Meanwhile, Palpatine, humiliated and mutilated, followed him like an embarrassed shadow. He followed orders with speed and fear. Palpatine, once the most astute mind in the galaxy, was now just a reflection of what he had been. He felt in his flesh the deep regret of having awakened in Anakin something he could never control. The severed arm was only the beginning. Any hesitation would result in further punishment, saber slashes, mental torture, public humiliation. He finally understood that he had created a monster, an emperor driven by loss and frustration, incapable of compassion. Yes, he was easy to manipulate at first, but anger and hatred made him change even more. But still, he didn't dare disobey. He was alive only because of Vader's mercy. Meanwhile, Yoda and Obi-Wan had survived, hiding in the far reaches of the galaxy. They joined the Wookiees on Kashyyyk, the Gungan people on Naboo, Senator Bail Organa on Alderaan, and other rebel forces who rejected Vader's regime. For 10 long years, they moved like shadows, resisting, fleeing, and sabotaging. The Empire tried to track them down, but the group remained united and protected, always one step ahead and always on the move. Hope still lived in the midst of fear, but everyone knew that, eventually, Vader would find them. The hunt for the Jedi intensified with the arrival of the Inquisitors. Few in number but relentless, the dark side hunters were rounded up by Vader, who made deals, and together they ravaged the hidden refuges of the last Jedi across the galaxy. Vader wouldn't stop. He wanted the Jedi dead, yes, but he also wanted answers. One of them knew where Padme was, that was his hope. And he would tear this truth from the galaxy, even if he had to destroy every star. The opportunity arose when Alderaan accepted a diplomatic meeting. Bail, trying to protect his people, agreed to meet with Vader. But the Emperor's sensors picked up something else. A strange vibration in the Force. He felt it, subtle but unmistakable. Padme, and next to her, 2 young, glowing echoes. Vader's heart fluttered, but his iron face remained impassive. Discreetly, he ordered the Inquisitors to sweep Alderaan with the utmost precision. The final hunt had begun. The Inquisitors, led by the second sister and the 5th brother, had found the hideout. In a secret villa in the fields north of Alderaan, Padme lived in quiet exile, looking after Luke and Leia. When the Dark Hunters approached, Yoda and Obi-Wan appeared like bolts of lightning. The attack was brutal and surgical. Yoda, spinning through the Inquisitors like a green hurricane, cut with lethal precision. Obi-Wan manipulated the Force wisely, disarming and knocking down his enemies with controlled but fatal blows. One by one, the Inquisitors fell. Darth Vader and his pet Sith dog arrived too late to stop the fight, but early enough to witness it. From atop a ship, he jumped with impact, landing in the middle of the devastated field. When he saw Padme and the children, the darkness that inhabited him shuddered. He tried to approach, but Yoda and Obi-Wan stood in front of him. "You won't have them," said Obi-Wan. Vader remained silent for a moment, until he raised his saber. His eyes burned, and then the chaos began. Yoda advanced first, leaping in a spiral, spinning his saber with mastery. Vader countered with bolts of Force lightning that not even the old master could contain. One of them hit him, hurling him brutally against a rock. Obi-Wan tried to cover Yoda, invoking the Force to hurl rocks and debris at Vader. But Palpatine was at Vader's side, and the former Emperor was driving them back with the power of the Force and fear. Obi-Wan launched himself with blue saber in hand, dueling with speed and precision directly against the weakened Palpatine, while Yoda controlled his own green saber from a distance, attacking Vader from various angles. But the Dark Emperor barely moved. He dodged, defended, and counterattacked with minimal movements. His eyes, filled with hatred, reflected the pain of a decade of betrayal. When he sensed the right moment, he raised his arms and conjured a devastating bolt of lightning that enveloped Obi-Wan and Palpatine at the same time. The Jedi Master screamed, his body writhing until he collapsed lifelessly, and so did the Sith, who cursed Anakin in his last breath. Yoda ran towards his fallen friend, but there was no time. Vader, his eyes aglow, activated Palpatine's red saber and spun it furiously. With a devastating leap, he descended on Yoda with the force of a comet. The old master tried to block, but the Sith blade was too powerful. The final blow split Yoda in half, ending an age of wisdom and light. The field fell silent. Padme screamed, and the new Empire plunged even deeper into darkness. The blaster shot echoed through the rubble of Alderaan, but Anakin Skywalker, now known throughout the galaxy as Darth Vader, deflected the shot with the swift movement of his gloved hand, which used the saber to redirect the shot. He looked towards the shooter and saw Padme, her face covered in dust and tears, taking aim again, her eyes full of contempt. Several more shots came, but he blocked them all effortlessly. Padme screamed with hatred, calling him a monster, a traitor, a murderer. For a brief moment, Anakin's heart hesitated. He was advancing, blinded by rage, when a small figure ran between the two of them. It was Luke Skywalker, only 10 years old, crying as he stretched out his arms in despair. "Dad, please stop. No more pain. Please, don't do anything against Mommy." His voice cut through the silence like a blade. Anakin froze. His heavy breathing reverberated. Then he saw Leia, running into her mother's arms, and for the first time in years. In silence, Anakin led everyone to Coruscant. Padme no longer resisted just to ensure her children's safety. The Empire's capital had been transformed into a dark reflection of its soul. Great black towers, razor-sharp architecture, and immense monuments erected in its honor. Padme looked on in shock, feeling disgusted and sad. Anakin, however, seemed genuinely proud. He showed off every detail with enthusiasm, like a child showing off a model. Padme didn't say a word, just watched with hardened eyes. Over the next few weeks, Anakin tried to get close to Padme several times. He sent servants, gifts, flowers, and promises. He asked her to be his queen, his empress, his light on the throne of the dark side. But she always refused. "I would never join a tyrant," she said firmly. Still, for Luke and Leia's sake, she wouldn't run away. She knew that her presence could save what was left of the man she had once loved. Tired of the destruction, Padme imposed a condition on him. If he wanted her company, he had to destroy the Inquisitors, stop the persecution, and try to be good. At first, Anakin scoffed at the proposal. He said that goodness was weakness. But as the months passed, Padme's constant presence and Luke and Leia's words began to slowly erode his emotional armor. He went on to hang some cruel officers with the Force. He stopped executions. He stopped destroying planets for minor rebellions. Their relationship became a game of endurance. Padme never let her guard down. She watched every Imperial decision with watchful eyes, always ready to correct or confront Anakin. And to her surprise, he began to listen. They argued, debated, sometimes fought for days, but he listened. When he wasn't listening, Luke and Leia were there to remind him of the promise he had made. Darth Vader's heart gradually began to resemble the heart of Anakin Skywalker. Luke grew up as a strong young man, sensitive to the Force. Vader began to train him. He taught him the use of the saber, mind control, perception, and, reluctantly, even the dangers of the dark side. Luke became one of the Empire's most respected generals, not for his cruelty, but for his justice. Leia grew up alongside Padme, learning all about diplomacy, strategy, ethics, and politics. She was the one who most influenced her father to avoid new conflicts. The new empire became less destructive, still authoritarian, but with a break. Many planets that had previously been destroyed or plundered began to receive aid, reconstruction, and diplomacy. Blind cruelty gave way to a rigid but functional order. Senators once again had a voice, albeit under surveillance. The people began to breathe with less fear. Anakin never publicly asked for forgiveness, but his actions began to be shaped by the hands of Padme and her children. Even so, Padme never forgot who he had been. She slept with one eye open and the other even wider. She never fully trusted, but she also never gave up trying to change that man. "You're not just what you did," she would say. "You're also what you decide to do now." And Anakin, as much as he resisted, was touched by those words. His anger, once uncontrollable, was now contained by a new armor, that of hope. The Inquisitors noticed Anakin's withdrawal. The man who once gave them orders with an iron fist now rejected their practices, scrapped secret missions, and dissolved part of their power. This caused revolt among them, and whispers began to spread through the shadows of the Empire. To make it clear who was still in charge, Anakin arranged a meeting with everyone. When half of them threatened his authority, he responded in the only way he knew how, with force. Alone, in a brutal display of power, he annihilated them one by one in front of the others. The massacre was silent, swift, and surgical. The hall filled with smoke and broken limbs as Anakin, bathed in the red light of his saber, watched the survivors flee like vermin. The message was clear. No one would touch his family or his will. After the confrontation, years passed in relative peace. Leia, growing in wisdom and sensitivity, immersed herself in studies with Padme. Political debates became her favorite pastime, and her intelligence blossomed rapidly. Little by little, Leia began to question the imperial structure. She talked to her father, proposing changes. She talked about the old Senate, the importance of political diversity, and the autonomy of the planets. Anakin, reluctant, listened impatiently. He believed that only centralized order could maintain the balance of the galaxy. Democracy has failed. Only absolute power guarantees stability, he said. But Leia disagreed. Freedom is worth more than stability. Without it, we are nothing. Tired of her father's refusal, Leia decided to confront him. She said that if he didn't give up the throne and make way for a new republic, she would leave for good. "I can't be the daughter of a tyrant." The words hurt more than any saber. Anakin, overcome with anger, ordered her to leave immediately. Luke tried to appease her, but went after his sister. Padme, heartbroken, accompanied them into silent exile. Anakin remained alone in the Emperor's vast, icy palace. In the gloomy silence of the Obsidian Towers, Anakin finally heard himself. The echo of loneliness was deafening. Without Padme, without Luke, without Leia, he was lost in thought. He began to wonder if it had all been worth it. The voices of the past came back: Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, even old Palpatine. But then, something in the Force alerted him. A powerful, cruel imbalance that pulsed towards those he loved most. It was a trap. The remaining Inquisitors had discovered the truth about his family. They tracked down Padme, Luke, and Leia and captured them, sending a direct message to Darth Vader. A new Inquisitor had proclaimed himself Emperor and demanded that Anakin sign an official treaty handing over control of the Empire. If he refused, his family would be publicly executed in a slow and monstrous manner. But this time Anakin didn't hesitate. He had already lost everything once. Not again. In the dead of night, guided by a new light from the Force, Anakin set off. Without heavy armor, with only his cloak and 2 hidden sabers, Obi-Wan's and another he had kept secret. He entered the Inquisitor's lair like a living shadow. The same rage that had consumed him during the massacre of the Tusken Raiders replayed in his mind. But now there was something different. Love. Every blow, every silent step was for them. The darkness trembled around him. When he reached the cell where Padme, Luke, and Leia were, his eyes filled with restrained tears. He freed the 3 of them, and Padme picked up a pistol dropped by an enemy. Leia did the same firmly. They were no longer hostages. They were a united force. The final attack was a symphony of revenge and redemption. Anakin led, Luke, Padme, and Leia covered the flanks. The old Darth Vader was gone. In his place fought a man willing to sacrifice everything to save what was left of the good. When the last Inquisitor fell, they were wounded, exhausted but together. Then, looking into his family's eyes, Anakin spoke the words that ended an era. After this, I am no longer emperor. The throne is not mine. Leia, Luke, the galaxy is yours now. Rebuild it. Do what I couldn't. And may the Force be with you. The throne is not mine.
Nice. Okay. Oh no. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. I wonder what happens, like, if they're gonna make a part 2 to this. Like, maybe 7 years later, a new enemy may come out. And then Skywalker is older, like in the 90s or 60s later, and for part 2. Like, Luke and Leia, Padme and Anakin are now, like, in the 90s or 60s. And Padme and Luke and Leia are now married and have their own families, I guess, and they're to fight a new enemy. I wonder if that's gonna be in the part, if there is a part 2 to this. I wanna know if that's gonna be like it. But anyway, bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I'll have the channel in the description below. Bye.